Good morning. My name is Scott Olson. I'm from Tekamah, Nebraska, a small farming community 40 miles north of Omaha. My father, Robert L. Olson, has farmed all of his life in Burke County and has given his 5 children the chance to know and love the work and rewards of an agricultural life. We presently farm about 3,000 acres. I have been invited to visit with you about the Missouri River flood of 2011. This man-made flood, as quoted by Secretary Tom Vilsack, was declared official on June 1, 2011. I started to document this flood with aerial photography on May 28th. At this time, we had many acres already underwater. Most of the crops in our area had been planted and were growing well. This spring, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers started increasing releases from Gavins Point Dam in response to the large snow melt and unusually heavy rains in the upper Missouri River Basin. This flow rate peaked at 160,000 cubic feet per second, or 1.3 million gallons per second, and remained at or near this level for 2.5 months. The Missouri River Valley is very flat, allowing the water to inundate large areas once it exceeds flood stage. As the water rose, it spread over hundreds of thousands of planted acres in 5 states: South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri. Local cities fought to maintain levees to protect their residential sites, airports, industrial, and manufacturing areas. The cost to Omaha's Eppley Airfield was over $20 million. The levees were held, but the runways on the right were 10 feet below the flood level. As farmers and businessmen downstream tended to the levees they had built, the raging water eroded and breached them. As the floodwaters rose 25 to 30 feet over normal level, growing crops were slowly consumed acre by acre. The fast-moving currents carried away topsoil and crop residue while depositing debris. The high water throughout the summer hid most of the damage that was being done to the soil below. Damage wasn't limited to cropland. This led to the eventual destruction of farms, homes, roads, note the fisherman by the arrow, wildlife habitat, businesses, and utilities. This is Fort Calhoun Nuclear Power Plant, and even whole communities. Railroads and interstate systems were completely covered and in some cases washed away, which halted freight and commerce. Many businesses closed, jobs were lost, and incomes were depleted. This is the bridge at Decatur, Nebraska, which has been closed all summer. This is the east approach to the bridge. You can see one span between the end of the highway and the first support. There are 3 more supports before you get to the edge of the river channel. Notice the trees at the top of the image that were pushed over by the floodwaters. Because this bridge is closed, it has transformed a 36-mile round trip for equipment parts to a 168-mile journey. Some people who live and work in our areas had to make similar daily commutes or secure lodging in the communities where they worked, which is an additional expense and took time away from family and friends. In late August, when water release upstream began to subside, the damage to the land became apparent. The number of levees that were destroyed was unbelievable. The Corps released a statement that they wanted to fix their own levees by March of 2012. However, in my opinion, there is not enough equipment and manpower in the country to complete this task. The amount of debris is staggering. I have seen boat docks, unearthed trees, propane tanks, and even homes displaced or scattered over the landscape. The greatest damage I witnessed in all my hours of flying has to be the land itself. The sandbars that have formed are overwhelming. The land adjacent to the Missouri River was a corridor for resident and migrant wildlife. Most habitat has been destroyed by erosion, drowning out, or covered with drifts of sand up to 15 feet deep. In many fields, large areas have been scoured 3 to 10 feet deep. Huge craters have been carved in fields a half mile or further from the river's edge. Some of these cuts are a mile long and up to 50 feet deep and still hold trapped water. The sand covering this barren landscape is fine and blows across the field like snow in the wintertime, destroying any living plant trying to get a foothold on the eroded soils. Before I share how this has affected my family, I'd like to tell you how one neighbor has been impacted. He had a 600-acre field with about 300 acres covered with sand, and he contracted a local contractor to get an estimate on what it would cost to have it removed. They dug holes in about 40 places to estimate the depth of the sand. They didn't arrive at an exact figure because a rough estimate put the cost at around $3 million, about $10,000 per acre. This is significantly greater than the value of the land. This is how the area as a whole has been affected. But first I'd like to tell you a little more about how this has affected my family. As I mentioned earlier, our family farmed about 3,000 acres. This summer we had almost 500 acres of land completely covered with floodwater. This is an image of the area in the past. My brother Randy and I purchased this land 3 years ago. Note the yellow arc in the image. This is a farmable slough that we will see in later images. In the early stages of the flood, we worked with other local farmers, plugging ditches and tubes that prevented flooding on another 10,000 to 15,000 additional acres, including another 925 acres that we farm. By mid-May, before floodwaters started rising, we had completed spring tillage and planting on all of our crops. The impending flood created a lot of fear and uncertainty. We questioned what additional expenses we should incur on our fields that were threatened to be inundated by floodwater. I personally fertilized 200 acres of corn, not knowing if this field would be there in a week or two. This is a field where we lost the majority of our crop ground this year. The first image was taken on May 28th and shows the water filling an old slough. Here we see the water starting to recede. By now most of the water is off the field, but a large gully formed feeding into the old slough. This gives you some idea how big of a ditch eroded in our field. The arrow is pointing to family members on four-wheelers checking out the damage on the ground. This shows how much sand was deposited. The four-wheeler is sitting on 3 to 4 feet of sand above the original grade. This shows more of the erosion throughout the field. And this gives you a better idea of how deep and long the gully is in our field. Without significant and costly repair to this field, the center pivot in the background will not be able to irrigate about 1/3 of the field. Fields covered by crop insurance may recover production costs and some of the lost potential revenue, but will never replace the income that would have been generated from raising a crop. Personally, my family has lost significant income from flood damage this year and will for many years to come until productivity levels return. We are making repairs to our farmland. We hired professional earth-moving contractors at a cost of $230 per hour per machine for 3 machines. We also have 2 machines of our own working to remove the sand. If funds are available, we may be eligible for a $90 per hour reimbursement from the FSA Emergency Conservation Program. If Congress does not appropriate these funds, all costs will be at our expense. Currently, no funds have been appropriated for the state of Nebraska. In closing, from the air, I have seen the unbelievable damage to so much, including homes, farmsteads, national and state parks, wildlife habitat, infrastructure, and whole communities. But to me, the greatest travesty was the unnecessary destruction of the hundreds of thousands of acres of cropland. It will take decades to reclaim and restructure what land can be saved.